We'll go ahead and get started then. So this is the session on what CFOs need to know about transitioning to the cloud. I'm Heather Templeton, and this is my partner in crime,
James Poole.
James Poole. We're both working RDO, the Research Development Operations Office at Blackbaud. So a little bit about me, full transition. So I've been at Blackbaud 22 years. I'm from Clover, South Carolina. We like to say the city with love in the middle, up just below Charlotte, North Carolina. My nonprofit passion is around community green space. I'm actually proud of something I did over the last 2 or 3 years. Our community park was taken away from us, and I formed a small nonprofit to help save it. And we actually challenged the National Park Service because the park was bought with land and water conservation funds, and so it's supposed to be conserved indefinitely, or they're supposed to go through a good process for moving it. So we actually got the city of Charleston and the National Park Service to recognize that something was done wrong and fix that. So that's it was a very exciting time for me. James got tired of me talking about the park, but that's my passion area. I do like to travel a lot. Any extra time I have or funds I spend on traveling with my 2 8-year-olds and my husband. And then my Blackbaud passion is around financials, and we like to say everything else is just a subledger to the general ledger. So you'll see me reminding people that frequently when they talk about how great their products are. I'm like, well, you revolve around general ledger, so let's keep that in mind. That's me.
Yeah, and I'm James Poole. I'm one of the engineering managers at Blackbaud. I've been with the organization for 22 and a half years now, and I've spent the vast majority of that time working on our accounting products and our accounting solutions. I've worked with some other products as well, like Education Edge, Razor's Edge, Online Express, BBNC, touched a lot of different ones. But most of my focus has been on the accounting side. From Charleston, South Carolina, which is where Blackbaud's headquartered. And in my spare time, I like to coach youth soccer. Been doing that for about 12, 13 years now, and enjoy working with kids and enjoy teaching them the game. I'm a graduate of Clemson University, which makes me an avid college football fan. But besides that, I spend a lot of time volunteering with their career services department, doing things such as reviewing resumes for students, putting on seminars on how to be successful at a career fair. I'm a guest lecturer for the computer science department with their professional ethics courses. And just anything I can do to give back to the university and give back to students and help them transition from being a student into the workforce, I enjoy doing that. I spent a lot of time at Blackbaud recruiting, hiring, mentoring, growing interns and new college grads, so I guess that's kind of my Blackbaud passion.
Yeah, and I'm going to brag on James a little bit. We feel strongly about an intern program here at Charleston and Blackbaud. And James does a lot of recruitment for that, and we like to bring the interns in over the summer, and then they come into full-time employees. And you'll find that a lot of young college students these days, they're more driven by purpose in their lives than what their specific career is going to be. So they tend to resonate well with Blackbaud and what we're doing. So I encourage you to work with your local universities and colleges as well. You could probably find some great volunteer opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so like Heather said earlier, today's focus of today's session is on financial cloud applications, and we'll do that by looking at 2 different things. We'll look at what are the benefits of using cloud software, and then we'll also look at what are some considerations for people who have not made the jump to the cloud yet but may be considering doing it in the future, and we'll look at those and go a little bit more in depth with that, and then at the end, me and Heather will be around to answer questions. So first, let's look at 2 different things. Let's look at on-premise software versus cloud software, just to kind of define it. So on-premise software is software that's installed locally on an organization's infrastructure, and it is maintained by that organization's IT staff typically, which means that that IT staff is responsible for things such as the data security, doing updates, maintaining the database, so forth and so on. Because it's installed locally on an organization's infrastructure, usually it's highly customizable to that organization's needs. And the flip side of that is the implementation process typically is a little bit longer, or sometimes much longer, than when you look at a cloud application. A cloud application is an application that is hosted by a third party and is accessed via the internet, whether it be browser or whether it be some other method. And the application is installed, managed, maintained on that third party's infrastructure or hardware. So that third party is also responsible for things such as updates, maintaining the application, any data security, any database tuning. That's usually the responsibility of the third party vendor. Typically, it's less customizable, and the reason for that is with a hosted application or with a cloud application, multiple clients are hitting that application at the same time, so there's usually less opportunity to customize it. But the flip side of that is the ramp-up time and the onboarding time is usually much, much quicker than when you're looking at an on-premise application.
All right, so today we're going to talk about ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, and these are your finance office systems, your critical operations. We're talking about software like payroll, credit card processing, your accounting software, as well as like billing and inventory, your CRM. These are the applications we're talking about today moving to the cloud. And where some nervousness, and hesitancy sits within the organizations. How many of you today use Blackbaud Merchant Services? So yeah, all of those you consider that you're operating in the cloud for that. You can see that the industry's definitely changed and is continuing to change. By at least 2018, half the IT spend will be based on cloud services. Nonprofits typically lag a little behind on what's going on in the for-profit world, but you can see that we're definitely growing too as well from a nonprofit sector. And that, interesting enough, of financial applications, 30% of that revenue share for cloud is by financial applications. And by 2021, we're expecting like 46% of financial software to be part of the revenue for cloud. So definitely moving that way. People are less hesitant to move from on-prem into the cloud. And these are stats by IDC and Forbes.
Yeah, so some of the things we're going to look at today when considering whether you should move to the cloud or what are some of the benefits of cloud applications. We're going to look at 5 areas and we'll go much more in depth with each one of them. Security, availability, the affordability of cloud applications, the IT burden on the actual organization itself, and then productivity. There we go. And so the first thing we'll look at is security, right? As I mentioned before, when you use a cloud application, because the cloud application is installed, managed by the third-party vendor, the security of the application is managed by that vendor as well. And that's an important thing to know. In today's world, obviously, the risk of a security breach and the negative connotations that comes with that is a big concern for a lot of organizations. And that leads a lot of people to believe that, hey, maybe it's better to keep my data in-house. But that's not necessarily always the case. The expertise that's required to effectively manage, maintain, and secure an environment is really high. And if you look at today's attacks in today's world, small and mid organizations are as attacked or targeted as much as the big cloud providers are. So why is that? That's because the hackers know that it's tough to actually secure an organization and secure an organization's infrastructure and keep and maintain it secure. So sometimes they'll target the smaller to mid-sized organizations because it's an easier attack. Now, the flip side of that is for a cloud provider, that actually is their area of expertise. And they have the staff and they have the expertise available to do it on a day-to-day basis to really secure and maintain their environments. So they got to think about it from a hacker's perspective. They're looking for the easy targets a lot of times, and a lot of times the easy targets are actually organizations such as yours, as opposed to trying to go for somebody that's really big. So that's something to consider. Also, if you look at the standards that are in the industry, most cloud providers, or pretty much all reputable cloud providers, are going to follow those as well. And that's something that as an organization, you have to figure out, do I want to try to take that on, or do I want to allow the cloud provider to do that?
So a little bit about what Blackbaud provides. I'll let James go into some of he participates in these audits regularly. So.
Yeah, so, and this really this is what Blackbaud's hosting provides, but also, all cloud providers are going to provide this, is we go through a series of audits done by third-party auditors in different areas. These are just a couple of examples, such as HIPAA or PCI or SOC 1. And those audits are then, the results of those audits each year are then published at the URL, such as we have the URL here below, so that clients can go in and log in and actually see when the audit took place, and they can actually see the results of those audits. But it's a little bit more than just getting audited. For organizations such as ours, it's really about being proactive and in day-to-day figuring out how are we going to prevent malicious attacks. Blackbaud's hosting, for example, subscribes to various industry notification systems that allow us to find out when attacks are coming, what type of attacks are coming, so that we can proactively update our software and proactively update our hardware to prevent those attacks before they even have a chance to happen. When we write our cloud applications today, we use latest state-of-the-art coding standards, which help prevent things such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. And then our cloud operations work day-to-day on making the infrastructures as secure as possible and performant as possible so that we can ensure 99% uptime.
Yeah, so the next section is around availability, and so this is where you want to understand if you're looking at a cloud providers, what's their service level agreements, what is their uptime, how do they handle maintenance windows, what are they doing for that, and then how are your backups and redundancy efforts, how are they being managed? Like these are types of questions that you really want to dig into when you're interviewing cloud providers. Just to put it in perspective, the available uptime is 99.9% for Blackbaud. The downtime for that, if something does occur, is less than 44 minutes a month. So it's short, and so compare that to what your uptimes are, what your maintenance windows look like at your offices, how are things handled there? If a machine does go down in your office, who do you call? Do you have IT staff on hand, or are you contracting out for that, and do you have to have somebody come in and take care of that? So those are things to be thinking about when you're looking at a cloud service provider and how they're managing your systems and what they're providing you. We just recently rolled out public status pages for our solutions. I gave a sample on the right, so you can see at any given time what systems are up and how they're performing. And then if there were incidents, there's past history of those incidents and how they occurred and what the incident was around. We are also publishing maintenance pages when we're doing maintenance, what's occurring in those maintenances and how they're scheduled, and then listing past maintenances as well. So instead of the blast emails that sometimes come and can be confusing, we're putting those out on status pages and making those available to the public to see.
Looking at affordability, probably the biggest evidence of the affordability of cloud applications today is the adoption rate. As Heather showed before, the adoption rate is really kind of going through the roof. But there's other things to consider as well. Typically, cloud software is quoted as being 30% more cost effective. But each organization is different, and each organization is unique, and you really need to do your own total cost of ownership assessment to figure out what's the right amount, how much money can you save for your organization. So when you do total cost of ownership, keep in mind total cost is all cost. It's easy to look at your hardware costs over the next couple of years, figure out what that cost is going to be, and do some type of allocation over headcount. But you need to consider other things as well. You need to consider what your growth of your organization is going to be, and you need to consider how much time and effort is spent by the IT staff. There are TCO calculators out there to help you do this, but unfortunately, those TCO calculators don't capture some of the intangibles. For example, with a cloud application, the way it's built and the way it's deployed and maintained, since it's able to be updated on a day-to-day basis or hour-to-hour basis, it's able to keep up with technology changes a lot faster, and you might not get that with an on-premise application, and it's hard to calculate that into a total cost of ownership calculation. If you're new to clouds or subscription-based applications, you might want to look at how the actual usage pricing works, because that's something that's different as well. Lots of subscription-based applications are based off of things such as number of users, number of records, number of transactions, some based on database size. It really just depends, so make sure you do your homework so you really get a good picture of what the cost is going to be. And at the same time, project out over the growth of your organization for 3 to 5 years. Usually total cost of ownership assessments, they do 3 to 7 year assessments. 3 years is usually pretty clear. Once you get out towards 7 years, sometimes it gets a little bit hazy. And sometimes at 7 years, you get to the point where it looks like the cost of a subscription-based application is more than the cost of an on-premise application, but you need to ask yourself some other questions, such as, am I getting a more reliable product? Am I getting a product that has better industry standards? Am I getting a product that's more secure? Am I getting a product that has better productivity? And sometimes when you ask those questions, then you have to take those things into consideration. It makes a little bit more sense to go to a cloud application. But IT burden is more than just cost, right? It's the time that your IT staff spends and the time that you personally spend on your applications. In today's world, managing IT can be an expensive process. And you want to make sure that that is something that your organization is comfortable with, and ask yourself, is this really what my organization's focus is? So one of the big concerns about managing IT is IT turnover and the havoc it can wreak when somebody important leaves. That kind of goes away when you use a cloud provider. And it also allows you to get out of that IT staffing business, which could be a positive for your organization.
The next section is around productivity, and I think this is where the cloud has really like expanded on how we use our time and what we spend our time on. Just the ability to spend more focus on your mission and your purpose versus updating your machines, or not even being able to look at something when you get a call in the middle of the night, or not in the middle of the night, but in the late afternoon from a board of directors wanting to know about a special a donor that he's having dinner with that night. So this is where you really need to look at like, what is getting to the cloud providing your organization extra time to spend on, and how are you using that time? You can also, one of the things, if you have a good cloud provider and the integrations that they have at their APIs, you're writing more integrations between other software solutions that might be today be disjointed. So manual data entries, importing files, how are you doing that going forward? We have our partners that participate in them, and so each of them are writing current integrations moving forward to the API. So I would say we probably have 5 to 10 that are participating in the program, 5 that are at least have applications already out there. And then we're doing things like, I don't know if you've seen, there's a new Outlook integration with RENXT. So if you get an email coming in, you can actually pull up the profile at the same time the donor that email came. For Financial Edge, we have 2 that work with Excel, where you can import budgets from an Excel add-in, and or import journal entries from Excel add-in, and then do a budget import as well from Excel add-in. So that, that's where we're spending. And that if you've done any of that in the past, and you have IT staff on hand that are good with APIs, they probably have a computer science background. We have spent a lot of investment on our documentation and our partner program, and how you get to that and see that and test it and use it from a cloud standpoint as well. So no more multiple test sample databases, coding. It's very cool. So yeah, and it's a good URL. You can go out there and just point it to your IT staff and they'll fall in love with it. So, promise. And I think about just the ability to look up things. I'm not encouraging you guys to work from home in the evening hours. Work-life balance is good. But the ability to pull things up from home or when you're out on the road is a big benefit. And I just pulled some screens up to, from your iPad. For financials, I think you should be on your iPad, probably not your phone device, to look at budgets and journal entries. But the capabilities are there. It's easier to get into your information, see what's going on, look things up. So, and then you go.
Yeah, so Blackbaud Sky is Blackbaud's cloud for the global philanthropic community. Philanthropic is a hard word for a Southern boy to say. For the global nonprofit community. And it consists of 3 different parts. There's the application services, which are services such as the Financial Edge, NXT, or our APIs. And then you're looking at the cloud infrastructure, which is our hardware that is best in class service providers such as Microsoft, Azure, or Amazon Web Services. And then there's the cloud operations, which are the people who on the day-to-day take care of, make sure that the infrastructure is secure, it's running as smooth as possible, and it's running at that 99.9% uptime.
Yeah, the monitoring standpoint.
Yep.
So I pulled out a couple of little examples for if you were going to look, how you would go about it, how would you send out that RFP, what would you look for in a cloud provider. This is some sample screenshots of a paper that Microsoft has. It's a checklist. Program management is my background, so I like to think, ROIs, checklist, how much time and effort my organization is going to need to spend, and what risk we might have. So these are samples. The paper is called Cloud Services Due Diligence Checklist, so if you want to, you can Google that, find it. So they have a couple areas they talk about are around performance, service, that's your monitoring, what services are they providing, management, governance, around accessibility. So it's a good little paper to give you thought, to help you think through the process and what you want to need to do if you want to transition. And then from Blackbaud's standpoint, for any of our NXT applications, specifically I pulled out Financial Edge and NXT.
Right, yeah. How many people in here have Financial Edge 7 but have not moved up to the Financial Edge NXT? Almost everybody,
yay.
wow. Yeah, so a couple things to consider, this is good. A couple things to consider. First of all, if you're getting ready to make that move, or if you're looking to make that move, find out as much information as possible. Talk to your account executives, talk to people here like me and Heather, and find out as much information as possible about how the migration process works so that you can have a good understanding of when to actually do it and how to time it within your organization. Once you make that decision, go ahead and start doing any database cleanup that you can think of now, and you can certainly talk to the experts at Blackbaud and they can give you some advice. But some things to think of, for example, deduping your database, closing fiscal years, anything like that that's data cleanup that'll help with the migration process and will help you get to the state when you get up into the cloud where your data will be as clean as possible. You can go ahead and start working on those things today, and you can start scheduling that out. And then start looking at FENXT and its capabilities and start looking at how can I take advantage of those capabilities, or how can my organization take advantage of those capabilities so that you can start planning for the future. For example, do you want to implement expense management? Do you want to implement some type of credit card management? That's things that are new in FENXT that we don't have an FE7 today per se, and you can start figuring out how can my organization take advantage of that once we get on board with FENXT.
One thing that's it's more of a gotcha on the RE side, the Razor's Edge side, and the Financial Edge side. But do you have any customizations? Do you have any of those third-party plugins or integrations? You really need to inventory how you're using the Gen 7 product lines and what integrations and custom reports have you done over the year. That's not to say that they won't move to the cloud. It's just it's better to know about them now as you're preparing than after you start that process.
Right.
Any specific questions around? And James used the word migrating your database. It's not how many people used accounting for nonprofits before Financial Edge. Is it So it's not a conversion process like prior. It's specifically taking your database and just moving it to the cloud and enabling new functionality on top of it. So you're not transforming your data for Financial Edge. It's the same relationship tables, the same reports that you've been using, just presented in the new user interfaces with new, tighter functionality with integrations like bank reconciliation or the credit card management tools. So,
right.
And I shouldn't say use the word just because it's actually really cool and powerful. But I don't want you to feel like you're converting your data or moving it somewhere else. So, the only thing I'm thinking of, and we can take it to research, is if you have another integration with another product that's forcing that IP. So we'll take your details and research that for you.
Right. And going back to your question before about whether there will come a day when you can no longer use the Financial Edge 7. If you use the Financial Edge NXT today, you can actually use both, or you actually do use both products at the same time. So it's one database, it's two applications. So you enter an invoice in one, it automatically shows up in the other. So what a lot of clients do is they will slowly migrate over, or if they're in a time crunch and they know how to do something really quick in FE7, they'll jump in FE7 and do it, and then when they have more time, investigate or play in FENXT. So as Heather said, for the near future, or however long the future is, right? You'll have access to both systems, your FE7 system and your FENXT system at the same time, and you can, in the data, it's a one set of data, so you can do data entry or reports or lookups or whatever from either system.
We did put up a kind of timeline just to show you how easy it is, so you're thinking in time frames for moving?
Yeah, so when you sign on with FENXT, within 2 business days you'll get contacted by the activation service, and they will help you unlock any modules if you purchase new modules, or help you update any user licensing. And then within a week from then, you will get contacted by the migration team, which will start the process of actually migrating your financial data from your on-premise site up to Blackbaud Sky. And then once that's complete, within one day, you receive an email with your credentials on how to log into the FENXT and start getting rolling from there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy process.
Yeah, and you can schedule that time for when you're ready to migrate based on, whether you have audits going on, you're closing your year, staff availability. So. PaperSafe has their own cloud provider that integrates with Blackbaud as well. So
Yep.
PaperSafe for the cloud, and that is you can move now, but then they'll at one point want you to move to the cloud provider as well. Their cloud.
Yeah, HIPAA covers both the infrastructure and the software itself. So there are certain requirements to be HIPAA compliant on the infrastructure for security, which is going to be, in our case, agnostic to the actual application itself. Then on the actual application side, like in your case, as you're explaining, if you have a child's name or some type of sensitive information, there's requirements from HIPAA to encrypt that data. And so Blackbaud is encrypted in various applications, but what we do like to hear about when you are using that data, maybe somewhere that's not as easily discoverable as we would think, so that we can make sure that we think about that going forward on how can we secure that data as well. So it's really two sides of it. It's the infrastructure side being secure, and then it's the data application side of it being secure as well, and you do that through encryption.
When you're using database fields to store different database, we are securing the database and we're keeping it behind our secure walls and using latest technologies to prevent attacks. But on the application side, that's where you have to lock down what users can see that information. Yeah. So there's that two separate passes of security. Yeah. But if I was, you mentioned client names, which are easier to keep separate, but don't put credit card details in fields, text fields. We'll get, that's where PCI and PADSS will come in. You only use credit card fields that are designed to encrypt for that type of information. And we've been really focused over the last year on completing workflows. So, your data invoice entry and processing of checks is complete in FENXT, so you can do that whole workflow for accounts payable. Reporting, the reporting, I've got to say, is way better than FE7, and with the drill down, to me, it's worth going to FENXT just to get that reporting and the Excel add-in, just because I know how big a deal that is for the accounting office. So doing that is, and then you can, and actually if you want, if you're somebody that lives in both worlds, you can live in both worlds. It supports a single login that switches between the systems. And we call that the Financial Edge 7 side, we call it the open the database view. So
the big thing that I would suggest is optimizing fiscal years and closing fiscal years, if you can close them. But even if you can't close fiscal years, if you optimize fiscal years, that will help from a performance perspective. And then anything with any merging of duplicate data would certainly help as well. But those are probably the two areas that I would focus on in order of data cleanup. I'm trying to think if there's anything on the banking side, but nothing really else jumps out at me.
I think it's more about optimizing, summarizing those fiscal years.
Yeah.
Just because you're going to get a better performance in general, and we recommend that even if you're on-prem, that you summarize fiscal years.
Right.
Are you excited? Ready to go? Ready to go see if they have ice cream today? All right, well, we'll let you go, and if y'all want to talk amongst yourselves, you can stay in here. We got water. I'm not sure what they have out there, but we enjoyed having you. Thanks for coming.
Yep, thank y'all.
And we're up here if you want to come ask us a private question. We'll stay up here for a while, too. Well, not too private, not too personal. Thanks.